A 6-year-old girl stands on a busy corner, caring for twin toddlers while trying to grill donated potatoes. When she dials her sick father, a millionaire CEO answers instead. What happens next will shatter everything Victoria Ashford thought she knew about family, love, and the walls she built around her heart. Can a wrong number become the rightest thing that ever happened? Please like this video and tell me in the comments, would you answer a call from a stranger's child? Your stories inspire me to keep sharing these emotional journeys. The October wind cut through Portland's downtown streets like a knife, but little Madison Harper barely noticed anymore. At 6 years old, she had learned that complaining about the cold didn't make it warmer, and crying didn't fill empty stomachs. She adjusted the thin blanket wrapped around her twin baby brothers Jake and Noah, who sat in a rusty shopping cart she'd found behind the grocery store 3 blocks away. Their matching blue eyes stared up at her with the kind of trust that made her chest hurt. "It's okay," she whispered to them, though her own stomach growled so loud she was sure people walking past could hear it. "Maddie's gonna get us food, I promise." She'd been standing on this corner since 7 that morning, and the sun was already climbing high in the sky. Her small hand clutched a cardboard sign she'd made from a cereal box. "Please help, hungry babies." The words were crooked because her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, hadn't taught them how to write hungry yet, so she'd copied it from a billboard she'd seen last week. Most people walked right past them. Some looked away so fast it was like Madison and her brothers were invisible. A few dropped coins into the plastic cup she'd placed on the sidewalk. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The coins clinked together with a sound that used to make her hopeful, but now just reminded her how far away they were from having a real meal. Around 11:30, something changed. A woman in a business suit stopped in front of Madison, her expression softer than most. She reached into her purse and pulled out not coins, but actual dollar bills. Then she reached in again and pulled out 2 potatoes and a small bag of carrots. "Here, sweetie," the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "I wish I could do more, but I'm late for a meeting. Please, take care of those babies." Madison's eyes filled with tears as she clutched the vegetables like they were made of gold. "Thank you, ma'am, thank you so much." As the woman hurried away, Madison looked down at Jake and Noah. They were getting fussy, their little faces scrunching up in that way that meant they'd start crying soon. She needed to feed them now, not later. Her mind raced, remembering something she'd seen homeless people do near the park. They'd made little fires in metal cans to keep warm and cook food. She pushed the cart down 2 blocks until she found what she was looking for. An old abandoned grill leaning against a dumpster behind a closed restaurant. It was rusty and dirty, but Madison didn't care. She'd seen her daddy use one before, back when they lived in the apartment, before he got too sick to work, before everything fell apart. With strength that surprised even her, Madison dragged the grill back to their corner. She found some old newspapers in a recycling bin and some broken wooden pallets behind a store. Her daddy had taught her to be resourceful. "We're survivors, Maddie girl," he used to say before the illness took his energy away. "Harpers don't give up." It took her 20 minutes and 3 burnt fingers, but Madison got a small fire going. She carefully placed the potatoes on the grill, watching them start to cook. The smell made her mouth water so much she had to swallow hard. Jake and Noah had stopped fussing, mesmerized by the flickering flames. "See?" Madison told them, trying to sound brave and grown up. "Maddie takes care of you just like Daddy would if he could." Daddy. The thought of him made her chest tight. He was home right now, lying in their small, cold apartment, too weak to even get out of bed most days. The medicine he needed cost more money than they'd ever had, even before he got sick. Madison had tried calling 911 once, but when the paramedics came, Daddy had sent them away. "Can't afford the hospital," he'd said, his voice barely a whisper. "We'll be fine, Maddie, we'll figure it out." But they weren't fine. They were so far from fine that Madison sometimes forgot what fine felt like. As the potatoes cooked, Madison made a decision. She was going to call Daddy and tell him they had food today. She'd taken his old cell phone with her this morning, the one that barely worked anymore, the one that only had a few minutes left on it. She pulled it from her pocket. The screen cracked so bad she could barely see the numbers. Her small fingers pressed the familiar digits, the ones she'd memorized in case of emergencies. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Madison held her breath, hoping Daddy was awake enough to answer. Hello? The voice that answered was not her father's. It was a woman's voice, crisp and professional with an edge of impatience. Who is this? Madison's heart sank. Wrong number. She must have pressed a button wrong because of the cracked screen. She was about to hang up when the woman spoke again. Hello? Is someone there? I can hear breathing. I'm sorry, Madison stammered, her 6-year-old voice small and scared. I was trying to call my daddy. There was a pause on the other end. When the woman spoke again, her tone had changed completely. Sweetheart, where are you? Are you okay? Madison looked at her brothers, at the grill with the cooking potatoes, at the busy street where nobody saw them. Suddenly, all the fear and exhaustion and hunger she'd been holding back crashed over her like a wave. Mommy, we eat on the street, Madison said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. She didn't know why she called this stranger Mommy. Maybe because she couldn't remember her real mother, who'd left when the twins were born. Maybe because she desperately wished someone, anyone, would take care of them the way mommies were supposed to. The silence on the other end stretched so long that Madison thought the call had dropped. Then the woman's voice came back, urgent and intense. Baby, listen to me very carefully. What street are you on? Can you see any signs? Madison looked around, squinting at the building behind her. Morrison Street? By the big bank? Morrison and what? What cross street, honey? I don't know. There's a coffee shop on the corner. The green one. Stay exactly where you are, the woman commanded, and Madison could hear rustling sounds like she was moving fast. Do not move, do not talk to anyone. I'm coming to get you right now. Do you understand me? But I don't know you, Madison said, even as hope fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird. You will, the woman said, and something in her voice made Madison believe her. You will. I'm 10 minutes away. Stay on the line with me, okay? Tell me your name. Madison Harper. But everyone calls me Maddie. Maddie, that's a beautiful name. I'm Victoria. Victoria Ashford. And Maddie, I need you to be brave for just a little bit longer. Can you do that for me? Madison looked at Jake and Noah, at their tiny faces, at the way they depended on her for everything. She'd been brave her whole life. What was 10 more minutes? Yes, ma'am. I can be brave. Good girl, Victoria said, and Madison could hear a car engine roaring to life. Now tell me, Maddie, are those your brothers with you? Yes, ma'am. Jake and Noah. They're 2. They're twins. Victoria made a sound like a sob and a gasp mixed together. And where is your daddy, sweetheart? He's home. He's sick, real sick. That's why I had to bring Jake and Noah with me. He can't take care of them today. And how long have you been on the street, Maddie? Since morning. Since 7 o'clock. Another sound from Victoria. This one definitely a sob. You're 6 years old, taking care of 2 babies, on the street since 7 in the morning, and you managed to make fire and cook food? Yes, ma'am, the potatoes are almost ready. I have to flip them soon or they'll burn. Jesus Christ, Victoria whispered, and Madison could hear the raw emotion in her voice. Maddie, you are the bravest, strongest little girl I've ever heard of. Your daddy must be so proud of you. Madison felt tears slip down her cheeks. Nobody had said she was strong before. Nobody had said Daddy was proud. He tells me I'm his brave girl. But Ms. Victoria, he needs medicine, he needs help, I don't know what to do anymore. You don't have to know what to do anymore, sweetheart. I'm 5 minutes away now. I can see Morrison Street. Keep talking to me, tell me what your brothers look like. They have yellow hair like me and blue eyes, and Noah has a tiny birthmark on his left cheek shaped like a star. Jake doesn't have any marks. They wear matching clothes 'cause Daddy says twins should match. Victoria's voice was thick with tears now. They sound perfect. And Maddie, when I get there, I'm going to take care of all 3 of you. You don't have to be brave alone anymore. Madison saw the potatoes were starting to burn. She carefully flipped them with a stick, the smoke making her eyes water. Ms. Victoria, are you really coming? People say they'll help sometimes, but they don't really mean it. I mean it, Maddie. I swear to God, I mean it. I'm 2 minutes away. Do you see a black Mercedes coming down the street? Madison looked up and saw a shiny black car weaving through traffic, moving way faster than the other cars. I see it. Is that you? That's me, baby. I see you too. I see a little blonde girl with 2 babies and a shopping cart and a grill. Oh my God, Maddie, I see you. The car screeched to a stop right in front of them, parking illegally with the hazard lights flashing. The driver's door flew open, and a woman stepped out. She was tall and beautiful, wearing an expensive turquoise business suit and high heels that looked like they cost more than everything Madison owned combined. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she wore jewelry that sparkled in the sunlight. But what struck Madison most was the expression on the woman's face. It wasn't pity or disgust or the uncomfortable guilt that most people showed. It was pure, fierce determination mixed with heartbreak. Victoria Ashford crossed the sidewalk in 3 long strides and dropped to her knees in front of Madison, not caring that her expensive suit was touching the dirty concrete. She reached out and cupped Madison's small, dirty face in her hands. "Hi, Maddie," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm here now. You're safe." And for the first time in months, maybe years, Madison Harper believed that someone was actually going to help them. She fell into Victoria's arms and finally let herself cry. Victoria Ashford had faced hostile corporate takeovers, cutthroat business negotiations, and boardrooms full of men who wanted to see her fail. She'd built her tech company, Ashford Innovations, from a garage startup to a $2 billion empire through pure determination and refusing to show weakness. At 38 years old, she was known as the Ice Queen of Portland's business district, a woman who never let emotions interfere with decisions. But none of that had prepared her for the sight of Madison Harper. As she held the sobbing 6-year-old girl, Victoria felt something crack open inside her chest, something she'd kept locked away for years. The child was so small, so thin, her clothes dirty and torn. Her little hands were covered in burns from the fire, and her face was smudged with soot and tears. Behind her, the 2 baby boys watched with enormous blue eyes, silent in a way that no 2-year-old should be silent. "It's okay, baby," Victoria murmured, stroking Madison's tangled blonde hair. "It's okay now. I've got you." She pulled back just enough to look at the child's face. "Maddie, listen to me. We need to get you and your brother somewhere safe and warm. Then we're going to get your daddy the help he needs. Can you tell me your address?" Madison hiccuped, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "It's 847 Riverside Apartments, Building C, Apartment 203. But Ms. Victoria, it's not very nice. And Daddy's going to be upset that I bothered a stranger." "You didn't bother me, sweetheart. You saved me from a very boring afternoon." Victoria managed a smile, even as her heart shattered into a million pieces. She looked at the makeshift grill, at the half-cooked potatoes, at the shopping cart that served as the twins' transportation. "These potatoes look almost done. Should we bring them with us?" Madison's face lit up with desperate hope. "Can we? I promised Jake and Noah that we'd eat today. We're absolutely bringing them. And Maddie, I promise you something right now. You and your brothers will never go hungry again. Do you believe me?" Madison studied Victoria's face with eyes that had seen too much for 6 years. "I want to believe you. That's good enough for now." Victoria stood, pulling out her phone. She dialed her assistant's number with shaking fingers. "Richard, I need you to cancel everything on my schedule for the rest of the week." "Yes, everything, including the Henderson merger meeting. I don't care if they're flying in from Tokyo. Reschedule it. And Richard, I need you to call Dr. Samantha Chen. Tell her it's an emergency and I need her to make a house call to 847 Riverside Apartments, Building C, Apartment 203. Tell her to bring her full medical kit and be prepared for anything. Yes, I know she doesn't make house calls. Tell her I'll donate $5 million to her free clinic if she does this." "Good. Call me back when it's arranged." Madison's eyes widened. $5 million? That's a real amount of money? "It is, honey. And your daddy's health is worth a lot more than that." Victoria bent down and carefully lifted Noah out of the shopping cart. The little boy was surprisingly heavy, solid and warm in her arms. He smelled like baby shampoo and something sour that she realized was hunger. "Can you help me get Jake?" Madison nodded eagerly and reached for her other brother. Victoria noticed how practiced her movements were, how efficiently she maneuvered the toddler despite being so small herself. This child had been doing this for a long time. "Maddie, did you push this shopping cart all the way from your apartment this morning?" "Yes, ma'am, it's not that far, only I don't know how many blocks, a lot." Victoria did some quick mental math. Riverside Apartments was at least 15 blocks from here. This child had pushed a shopping cart containing 2 toddlers, 15 blocks at 6 years old before 7 in the morning. The thought made Victoria want to simultaneously scream and cry. "You're incredibly strong," Victoria said, her voice thick. "Come on, let's get everyone in the car. Have you ever been in a Mercedes before?" Madison shook her head, clutching Jake tightly. Victoria opened the back door and realized with a jolt that she had no car seats. Of course she didn't. She didn't have children. She'd never wanted children. She'd built her entire life around not having the messy complications of family. And yet here she was, about to drive 3 children across town without proper safety equipment, breaking probably a dozen laws, and not caring even a little bit. "Okay, new plan," Victoria said. "Maddie, you sit in the middle of the back seat. Hold Jake on your lap. I'm going to buckle Noah in next to you as tight as I can, and then I'm going to drive very, very carefully. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." Victoria settled everyone in, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the seatbelt around Madison and Jake. Noah sat in the other seat, and Victoria used the belt to secure him as best she could, pulling it so tight that the little boy made a soft sound of protest. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered to him. "Just for a little while." She grabbed the potatoes from the grill, wrapping them in some newspaper from her trunk, and placed them on the floor of the car. Then she folded up the grill and stuck it in her trunk, along with the pathetic cardboard sign. She'd keep that sign forever, she decided, as a reminder of the day everything changed. As Victoria pulled into traffic, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Madison was watching her with an expression of wary hope, one arm wrapped protectively around Jake. The little girl had probably been disappointed by adults before, probably many times. "Maddie, tell me about your daddy. What's his name?" "Thomas. Thomas Harper. He's 32 years old. He used to work at the shipyard fixing boats and stuff. But then he got sick about 8 months ago and he can't work anymore. The doctors say he has something called autoimmune disease. His body attacks itself. The medicine costs too much, so he just lies in bed most days. Autoimmune disease." Victoria's mind immediately went to the possibilities. Lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. All treatable, all manageable with the right medication and care. All devastating without it. "And your mom, sweetheart, where is she?" Madison's voice got very small. "She left when Jake and Noah were born. Daddy said she couldn't handle having 3 kids. She just left one day and never came back. Daddy says she had her own problems, and we shouldn't be mad at her. But sometimes I am mad at her. Is that bad?" "No, baby. That's not bad at all. That's very normal." Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of woman abandoned her children? What kind of person left a 6-year-old to care for twin babies and a sick father? Thomas had said Julia had her own problems. Whatever those were, they must have been severe to make her walk away from 3 children. The drive to Riverside Apartments took 12 minutes, and each minute felt like an hour. The building was exactly as depressing as Victoria had imagined. A rundown 4-story complex with cracked concrete stairs and graffiti on the walls. The parking lot was full of potholes, and half the windows had sheets or cardboard instead of curtains. "Building C is over there," Madison said, pointing to the worst-looking building of the complex. Victoria parked and helped everyone out of the car. As they walked toward the building, she noticed people watching them from windows and doorways. A woman in a Mercedes wearing a designer suit, carrying 2 toddlers while a small blonde girl led the way. They must have looked bizarre. The stairs to the 2nd floor were steep and smelled like mildew and something worse. Victoria held Noah tight, making sure Madison and Jake were right behind her. Apartment 203 had a number that was hanging by one screw, and the door was thin enough that Victoria could hear someone coughing inside. "Maddie, does your daddy know you took the boys out this morning?" Madison looked down at her feet. No, ma'am. He was sleeping when we left. He sleeps a lot now because of the medicine he has. I left him a note, but I don't think he can read it yet. My writing's not very good. Your writing is perfect, Victoria said firmly. Now, should we knock, or do you have a key? Madison pulled a key on a string from around her neck. Her small hands fumbled with the lock for a moment before Victoria gently took it and opened the door. The apartment was dark, the curtains drawn tight against the afternoon sun. It smelled like sickness and poverty and desperation. The furniture was old and broken, and there was barely any food visible in the tiny kitchen area. But despite everything, the place was relatively clean. Someone had tried to maintain dignity here. Daddy? Madison called out softly. Daddy, we're home, and I brought someone to help us. A man's voice, rough and weak, came from the bedroom. Maddie? Baby, where were you? I've been so worried. I tried to call the phone, but... He appeared in the doorway, and Victoria's breath caught in her throat. Thomas Harper was devastatingly handsome, even ravaged by illness. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair that was too long and unkempt. His gray eyes were sunken with exhaustion and pain, but they were striking, intelligent, haunted. He wore sweatpants and a t-shirt that hung loose on what had clearly once been a muscular frame. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped the doorframe for support. And when he saw Victoria standing in his living room, holding his son, his expression cycled through confusion, fear, and something that looked like shame. Who the hell are you? He demanded, his voice gaining strength from protective instinct. Maddie, get behind me now. Daddy, no. Madison ran to him, wrapping her arms around his legs. This is Ms. Victoria. She's nice. She answered when I called you by mistake, and she came to help us. Thomas looked down at his daughter, then at Victoria, then at the twins. His face crumpled as understanding dawned. You took them out begging again. Oh God, Maddie, I told you not to do that. I told you I'd figure something out. But Daddy, you couldn't get up this morning. And Jake and Noah were so hungry. Madison's voice rose with desperation. I had to do something. Thomas's legs seemed to give out and he slid down the door frame to sit on the floor, his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he said, and Victoria realized he was talking to her. I'm so sorry you had to see this. I'm not a bad father. I'm not. I can't. Victoria carefully set Noah down and crossed the room. She knelt in front of Thomas Harper, looking him straight in those devastated gray eyes. Mr. Harper, my name is Victoria Ashford. Your daughter accidentally called my phone this morning, and I'm very glad she did. I'm here to help, not to judge. But I need you to let me help. Can you do that? Thomas stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. Help? Lady, I don't know who you are, but we don't need charity. We're fine. We're handling it. With all due respect, Mr. Harper, you're not handling it. Your 6-year-old daughter spent the morning on the street with your infant sons, cooking donated potatoes on a grill she found in a dumpster. That's not handling it. That's survival. And I'm offering you something better than survival. His jaw clenched, pride and desperation warring in his expression. I can't pay you back. I can't pay anyone back. I have $23 to my name, and that needs to last until God knows when, because I can't work and I can't get approved for disability and I can't. His voice cracked. I can't even feed my own children. Victoria reached out and took his shaking hand in hers. Then let someone help you feed them, please. I have a doctor coming here in about... She checked her watch. 15 minutes. She's going to examine you and figure out exactly what you need, and then we're going to make sure you get it. Why? Thomas demanded, tears streaming down his face now. Why would you do this? You don't know us. Why would you care? Victoria looked at Madison, who was watching them with eyes full of desperate hope. She looked at Jake and Noah, who were so quiet, so unnaturally still. She looked back at Thomas, at this broken man who was trying so hard to hold his family together with nothing but willpower and love. Because your daughter called me Mommy today, Victoria said softly. And something about that broke my heart and put it back together at the same time. Because I spent my whole life avoiding exactly this kind of complication, and today I realized that maybe complications are what I've been missing. Because for reasons I don't fully understand, I can't walk away from your family. I won't walk away. Thomas searched her face, looking for the lie, the catch, the inevitable disappointment. Victoria held his gaze, letting him see the truth. I'm scared, he finally whispered. I know, Victoria said. But Maddie was scared this morning too, and she found the courage to call for help. All I'm asking is that you find that same courage. There was a knock at the door, and Richard's voice called out, Victoria, Dr. Chen is here. Victoria squeezed Thomas's hand once before standing. That's the doctor. Will you let her examine you? Thomas looked at his children. All three of them were watching him with complete trust, complete faith that Daddy would make the right choice. After a long moment, he nodded. Okay, he said. Okay. Victoria opened the door to admit Dr. Samantha Chen, a petite Asian woman in her 50s carrying a substantial medical bag. Sam took one look at the scene, the thin, pale man on the floor, the three children, the depressing apartment, and her expression shifted into professional focus. Mr. Harper, I'm Dr. Chen. Let's get you on the couch and see what we're dealing with, shall we? As Sam began her examination, Victoria pulled Madison aside. Honey, are you hungry? Those potatoes must be cool enough to eat now. Madison nodded eagerly, and Victoria got the wrapped potatoes from where she'd set them down. She found some plates in the kitchen, mismatched, chipped, but clean, and divided the food between the three children. They ate like they were starving because they were. Victoria's phone buzzed. Richard had texted, The apartment is under surveillance. CPS was called anonymously yesterday. You need to know what you're stepping into. Victoria's blood ran cold. Child Protective Services. If they came and saw this situation, they'd take those children away. They'd separate the family. She looked at Thomas, who was answering Dr. Chen's questions in a weak but determined voice. She looked at Madison, carefully sharing her potato with her brothers, making sure they got more than she did. No, she would not let this family be torn apart. Whatever it took, whatever strings she had to pull, whatever laws she had to bend or break, she would not let these children lose their father. She pulled out her phone and texted Richard back, Get me the best family lawyer in Portland. I need them at this apartment within the hour. And Richard, this is now your only priority. Everything else can wait. Dr. Chen finished her examination and gestured for Victoria to join her in the hallway. Her expression was grave. He has systemic lupus erythematosus, severe case. Without treatment, he's looking at organ failure within the next year, maybe sooner. The good news is that it's very treatable. The bad news is that the medication is incredibly expensive, and he's going to need significant intervention to get back to any level of functionality. Victoria frowned. What about Medicaid? A family with 3 children and no income should qualify automatically. Sam's expression darkened. He applied 6 weeks ago, still waiting for approval. The problem is his income from last quarter, when he was still working, disqualified him initially. He appealed, provided proof that he lost his job due to illness, but the bureaucracy moves slowly. Meanwhile, he's been deteriorating. It's a nightmare I see too often. People who fall through the cracks because the system isn't designed for rapid decline. That's insane. That's America's healthcare system. But Victoria, we can bypass all of that if you're willing to cover the costs directly. We can get him into treatment today instead of waiting weeks or months for government approval. What do we do first? First, we get him admitted to a hospital. He needs IV steroids, he needs proper medication, he needs round-the-clock monitoring. Victoria, this man is in crisis. He should be in the ICU right now. Will he die if we don't get him to a hospital today? Sam hesitated. Not today. Maybe not this week, but soon. The question isn't if, it's when. Victoria nodded slowly, her mind racing through options and obstacles. If I get him admitted today, CPS will definitely take the children. There's already a case open. But if I can establish some kind of legal guardianship or foster situation first, maybe we can keep them together. Can he wait 6 hours? Victoria, what are you planning? I'm planning to save this family. Will he last 6 hours? Sam studied her for a long moment. Yes, but no longer. And Victoria? Whatever you're about to do, make sure you're ready for it. Taking on someone else's family is not like acquiring a company. You can't just walk away when it gets too complicated. I don't want to walk away, Victoria said, and realized with a shock that she meant it. I want to dive in. She went back into the apartment where Thomas was lying on the couch, his eyes closed. Madison sat next to him, holding his hand, while the twins played quietly on the floor with some old plastic toys. Mr. Harper, I need to talk to you about something important. Thomas opened his eyes, looking exhausted. Let me guess. You're going to call social services and have them take my kids. I don't blame you. I know how this looks. Actually, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to offer you a deal. You let me help you. Really help you, including getting you proper medical care. And in return, I'm going to ask for temporary guardianship of your children while you're in treatment. Not adoption, not permanent. Just long enough to make sure that CPS doesn't separate your family while you're getting better. Thomas sat up so fast he swayed with dizziness. You want my kids? I want to protect your kids. There's a difference. Mr. Harper, there's already a CPS case open. Someone called them yesterday. If they come here and see this situation, they'll take Madison, Jake, and Noah into the system. They'll put them in different foster homes because nobody takes 3 kids at once, especially not twins and an older sibling. Is that what you want? Of course that's not what I want. Thomas's voice broke. But you're a stranger. Why would I give you my children? Because I can keep them together. Because I can make sure they're fed and safe and cared for. Because I can fight CPS with lawyers and money and resources that you don't have. And because, Mr. Harper, your daughter already trusts me. Look at her. They both turned to Madison, who was watching the conversation with serious eyes. Daddy, I like Ms. Victoria. She came when I called. She didn't just walk away like other people. She came. Thomas looked at his daughter for a long moment, then at Victoria. And when I'm better, you'll give them back? The moment you're healthy and stable, we'll transition them back to your care. I'll put it in writing. I'll have lawyers draft an agreement that protects your rights. But Thomas, can I call you Thomas? We need to do this now. Today. Before CPS shows up and makes this decision for us. There was a knock at the door. Victoria opened it to find a tall black woman in a sharp suit, carrying a briefcase. Victoria Ashford, I'm Jennifer Matthews, family law attorney. Your assistant said you had an urgent situation. That's putting it mildly. Come in, Jennifer, we have work to do. For the next 2 hours, Jennifer Matthews worked legal magic. She drafted temporary guardianship papers, emergency medical consent forms, and a detailed agreement outlining Thomas's parental rights and the conditions for reunification. Thomas read every word, asked 100 questions, and signed with shaking hands. You're sure about this? He asked Victoria one final time. You're really going to take care of them? I'm going to take care of all of you, Victoria promised. That includes making sure you get the treatment you need. As the sun began to set, an ambulance arrived to take Thomas to Providence Medical Center, where Victoria had pulled strings to get him admitted immediately. Madison clung to her father, crying so hard she could barely breathe. I don't want you to go, Daddy. Please don't leave us. Baby girl, I have to get better so I can take care of you again, Thomas said, his own face wet with tears. And Miss Victoria is going to take care of you while I'm gone. Can you be brave for me? I'm tired of being brave, Madison sobbed. I know, sweetheart, I know, but just a little bit longer. And Maddie, thank you for calling for help. You saved us. You saved all of us. As the paramedics wheeled Thomas out, he caught Victoria's hand. Please, he whispered. Please don't let me down. They're everything to me. Everything. I won't, Victoria promised. I swear to God I won't. And as she watched the ambulance drive away, 3 children now in her care, Victoria Ashford realized that her carefully controlled, perfectly planned, emotionally distant life was completely and irrevocably over. The question was, why did that thought make her feel more alive than she had in years? Victoria's penthouse apartment in the Pearl District had 16-foot ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River, and roughly 4,000 square feet of meticulously designed living space. It had been featured in Architectural Digest twice. It was, by anyone's measure, spectacular. It was also completely inappropriate for 3 children. As Victoria carried Noah through the front door, with Madison holding Jake's hand behind her, she looked at her home through new eyes. Sharp corners everywhere, glass coffee table, white carpets. Absolutely nothing child-proofed or child-friendly. Holy cow, Madison breathed, her eyes wide as saucers. Ms. Victoria, do you live in a palace? It's just an apartment, honey. A very adult apartment. We're going to need to make some changes. She set Noah down, watching nervously as the little boy immediately toddled toward the glass coffee table. Madison intercepted him with practiced ease, picking him up and redirecting him toward the couch. Maddie, have you had dinner? We had the potatoes, remember? Victoria checked her watch. That was 5 hours ago. I meant real dinner, like with multiple food groups. Madison's confused expression told Victoria everything she needed to know about what constituted real dinner in the Harper household. She pulled out her phone and called Richard again. I need groceries delivered to my apartment. No, not my usual order. I need. She paused, realizing she had no idea what children ate. I need whatever kids eat. Milk, juice boxes, goldfish crackers, chicken nuggets, vegetables that aren't scary, fruit that's pre-cut. And I need it within 30 minutes. Also, send someone to buy 3 car seats, 1 for a 6-year-old and 2 for 2-year-olds. And clothes. I'll text you sizes. She looked at Madison. Honey, what size do you wear? I don't know. My clothes are from the donation center. Victoria's heart clenched. Okay, Richard, send a range of sizes for a 6-year-old girl and twin 2-year-old boys. Nice clothes, comfortable clothes, pajamas, everything. And toys, age-appropriate toys, and do I need a crib? Do 2-year-olds still use cribs? Ms. Victoria, Jake and Noah sleep in a bed now, Madison offered helpfully. We all sleep in the same bed, actually. To keep warm. Okay, scratch the cribs. Richard, I need 2 toddler beds delivered and assembled tonight. Yes, tonight. And safety gates, corner protectors, outlet covers, whatever child-proofing equipment exists. Hire people if you need to. Just make it happen. She hung up and turned to find Madison watching her with an expression of awe, mixed with worry. Ms. Victoria, you don't have to buy us stuff. We don't need much. Victoria knelt down to Madison's level. Sweetie, you need everything, and I want to give it to you, is that okay? Madison bit her lip, tears welling up. Why are you being so nice to us? Because you deserve nice. All 3 of you. Victoria pulled the little girl into a hug, feeling how thin she was, how fragile. Now, let's get you guys cleaned up before dinner arrives. Do you think Jake and Noah would like a bath? They love baths, but we haven't had hot water in a while. The landlord turned it off. Of course he did. Victoria added, Sue Madison's former landlord into oblivion to her mental to-do list. She led the children to her master bathroom, which had a huge soaking tub that would work perfectly for the twins. As she ran the water, making sure it was the right temperature, Madison helped undress her brothers. Victoria was shocked by how thin they were, their little ribs showing through their pale skin. Noah had a rash on his bottom that looked painful, and Jake had bruises on his knees from crawling on hard floors. Okay, boys, in you go, Victoria said with forced cheerfulness. She added bubble bath, expensive lavender bubble bath that was probably ridiculous for toddlers, but it was all she had, and watched as the twins splashed and laughed, the first real child sounds she'd heard from them all day. Madison stood watching, her hands clasped in front of her. Aren't you going to get in? Victoria asked. I can wait. I always bathe after them so the water's not wasted. Victoria's throat tightened. This child had been living like she was in a survival situation for so long that she didn't know any other way. Maddie, honey, we have unlimited hot water here. After the boys are done, you get your own bath. A long one with bubbles and everything. Okay? Really? My own bath? Your own bath. While the twins played, Victoria texted Richard again. I need a child psychologist specializing in trauma, and a pediatrician for a full checkup on all 3 kids. Schedule for tomorrow. Richard responded immediately. Victoria, are you sure about this? This is a massive commitment. Victoria looked at Madison, who was now kneeling by the tub, making sure her brothers didn't slip. Always the little mother. She looked at Jake and Noah, laughing as they played with bubbles, probably the happiest they'd been in months. She texted back, "I've never been more sure of anything." Getting the twins dried, diapered, with diapers from the emergency supplies Richard had sent, and dressed in some of Victoria's t-shirts, which hung on them like dresses, was a comedy of errors. Noah kept trying to escape, naked and giggling, while Jake sat perfectly still, watching Victoria with serious eyes that seemed too old for his face. "Jake doesn't talk much," Madison explained as Victoria finally got him dressed. "The doctor said he might just be a late talker, but Noah talks enough for both of them." As if on cue, Noah pointed at Victoria and said clearly, "Mama?" Victoria froze. Madison quickly corrected him. "No, Noah, that's Ms. Victoria, not Mama." But Noah shook his head stubbornly. "Mama, nice Mama." Victoria felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept sealed shut for so long she'd forgotten it was there. She pulled the little boy into her arms, breathing in the clean scent of him. "Yes, baby. Nice Mama. For now." While Madison took her bath, Victoria set up the living room with the foam padding and safety equipment that Richard's team had delivered with impressive speed. The groceries had arrived too, and she was attempting to figure out how to cook chicken nuggets when her phone rang. It was Dr. Chen. "Victoria, I wanted to update you on Thomas. We've started him on IV steroids and immunosuppressants. He's stable, but he's going to need to stay for at least a week, possibly 2. The good news is that his organs aren't as damaged as I feared. With proper treatment, he should make a full recovery." "And how long until he's functional? Until he can take care of the kids?" "That's harder to say. The medication will help relatively quickly. We should see improvement within weeks. But true recovery, getting his strength back, being able to work again, that's months, Victoria. Probably 6 months minimum, possibly a year." Victoria sank onto the couch, Noah and Jake playing at her feet with the new toys that had been delivered. 6 months to a year. Could she do this for that long? Could she maintain 3 children, run her company, and somehow not completely mess everything up? "How is he emotionally?" Victoria asked. Devastated, grateful, terrified. "He keeps asking about the kids. He wants to talk to them. Can I bring them to visit tomorrow?" "Absolutely. I think it would help both him and them." After hanging up, Victoria found Madison emerging from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel that was far too big for her. Her wet hair hung in tangles down her back. "Maddie, do you have a hairbrush?" "It's in my backpack, but it's broken." Of course it was. Victoria found a wide-toothed comb in her own bathroom and spent the next 20 minutes gently working through the tangles in Madison's hair while the little girl sat perfectly still, almost like she was afraid to move. "Does your head hurt?" "No, ma'am, you're being real gentle. Daddy used to brush my hair, but he hasn't had the energy in a long time." "What about your mom? Did she brush your hair?" Madison was quiet for a moment. "I don't really remember her much. I was only 3 when she left. I remember she smelled like flowers sometimes, and she used to sing, but that's all." Victoria's hand stilled in Madison's hair. "Do you miss her?" "Sometimes, but mostly I miss having a mom, you know? Like I see other kids at school, and their moms pick them up and bring them snacks and help with homework, and I just wonder what that's like." "What school do you go to, Maddie?" "Riverview Elementary. But I haven't been in a while. Daddy couldn't take me, and I couldn't leave Jake and Noah alone." Victoria made a mental note. Re-enroll Madison in school, arrange transportation, get her caught up on any missed work. The list of things these children needed was overwhelming. Dinner was chaotic. The chicken nuggets were slightly burned. The fruit was probably too cold, and nobody knew how to get Jake to eat anything that wasn't yellow. But they sat together at Victoria's expensive dining table, and they ate, and the children smiled, and that felt like a victory. By 8 o'clock, all 3 children were clearly exhausted. The toddler beds had been set up in Victoria's guest room, though Victoria had no idea if that was the right sleeping arrangement. Madison helped get her brothers settled, tucking them in with a tenderness that broke Victoria's heart. "Maddie, where do you want to sleep? I have another guest room, or you could sleep in here with your brothers, or—" "Can I sleep with you?" Madison asked in a small voice. "I'm scared to sleep alone. I've never slept alone." "Of course you can, honey." They ended up in Victoria's California king bed, Madison in one of Victoria's silk pajama tops which hung on her like a tent. The little girl was asleep within minutes, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the day. Victoria lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Madison's soft breathing. Her phone was full of messages from Richard, from board members, from business associates wondering where she'd disappeared to. She ignored all of them. Instead, she watched the small, brave child sleep and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Thomas. Dr. Chen gave me your number. Are the kids okay?" Victoria texted back, "They're safe, fed, clean, and sleeping. Jake and Noah are in toddler beds in my guest room. Madison is asleep next to me. They're okay, Thomas, you can rest." There was a long pause before his response came. "I don't know how to thank you. I don't even know if thank you is enough. You saved my children's lives today." Victoria typed and deleted several responses before settling on, "You don't need to thank me. Just focus on getting better. They need their dad." Another pause, then, "Can I ask you something? Why did you really do this? Nobody is this kind to strangers." Victoria thought about how to answer. Finally, she typed, "Because Madison called me mommy, and I realized I'd spent my whole life running from the idea of family because I thought it would make me weak. But watching your daughter take care of her brothers, seeing how much love exists in your family even with nothing else, I realized that family isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing there is. And maybe I want to be part of something that strong." Thomas's response was simple. "You already are." Victoria set her phone down and looked at Madison again, at her peaceful face, at the way her small hand rested on the pillow next to Victoria's. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. CPS would eventually come calling. The company would need her attention. Thomas would need support through his recovery. The children would need stability and routine and 1,000 things Victoria didn't know how to provide. But tonight, 3 children were safe and warm and fed. Tonight, a man was getting the medical care he desperately needed. Tonight, a little girl who'd been forced to be brave for too long could finally just be a child. Victoria reached out and gently tucked a strand of blonde hair behind Madison's ear. The little girl shifted in her sleep, moving closer to Victoria's warmth. And Victoria Ashford, the ice queen of Portland, who'd sworn she'd never let anyone need her, found herself thinking that maybe being needed wasn't such a terrible thing after all. Maybe it was everything. Victoria woke to the sensation of someone staring at her. She opened her eyes to find Madison's face inches from her own, those serious blue eyes studying her intently. "Good morning," Victoria whispered, not wanting to wake the twins in the next room. "Ms. Victoria, I need to tell you something important." Madison's voice was grave, weighted with the kind of worry that no 6-year-old should carry. "I wet the bed last night. I'm really sorry. I know your sheets are fancy and I ruined them, and you're probably going to send us away now." Victoria sat up quickly, noticing the damp spot on the bed. Madison's face was red with shame, tears already forming in her eyes. "Oh, honey, no, that's okay. That happens sometimes, especially when you're stressed or scared. We'll just wash the sheets." "But they're expensive." "Everything here is expensive, and I messed it up." Victoria pulled Madison into her arms. "Maddie, listen to me. Sheets can be washed or replaced. You cannot be replaced. You're infinitely more valuable than any sheets, okay? This doesn't change anything." Madison sobbed into Victoria's shoulder. "I tried so hard not to. I'm sorry. I'm such a baby." "You're not a baby. You're a little girl who's been through something traumatic. It's completely normal." Victoria rubbed circles on Madison's back, remembering something Dr. Chen had mentioned yesterday about stress responses in children. "Tell you what. After breakfast, we'll go shopping and get you some special nighttime underwear, just to make you feel more comfortable. No big deal." "You mean pull-ups? Those are for babies." "I mean protection that helps you sleep better so you don't have to worry. Lots of kids use them when they're going through tough times." Madison pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You're not mad?" "Not even a little bit." Victoria smiled. "Now let's get these sheets in the wash and check on your brothers." Jake and Noah were awake and playing quietly in their toddler beds, a behavior that Victoria was starting to realize was unusual for 2-year-olds. Most toddlers would be crying or calling for attention. These boys had learned to be invisible, to not be a burden. "Good morning, my loves," Victoria said, entering the room. Noah's face lit up when he saw her, reaching his arms up. "Mama!" Jake remained quiet, watching her with those two serious eyes. Victoria lifted both boys, one on each hip, and carried them to the kitchen. Madison followed, helping without being asked, already anticipating what needed to be done. Breakfast was another adventure. Victoria attempted pancakes using a recipe she found on her phone, and while they were slightly burned and oddly shaped, the children ate them like they were the finest meal they'd ever had. Madison cut her brother's pancakes into tiny pieces, blew on them to cool them down, and made airplane noises to get Jake to eat. "Maddie, you're really good at taking care of them," Victoria observed. "I've been doing it for a long time. Since they were born, really. Mommy left when they were just a few days old, and Daddy was working double shifts to pay for the hospital bills, so I learned. You were only 3 years old. Almost 4, but yeah. Daddy taught me how to warm bottles and change diapers and stuff. He said I was his special helper." Madison's voice caught. "I miss when he could help too, before he got so sick." Victoria's phone rang. It was Dr. Chen. "Victoria, Thomas is asking for the children. Do you think you could bring them by this morning?" "Of course. We'll be there within the hour." Getting 3 children ready to leave the apartment was like orchestrating a military operation. Victoria had to dress them in their new clothes, which the twins kept trying to remove because the fabric felt strange compared to their old, worn things. Madison insisted on wearing her old shoes because the new ones felt too fancy. The drive to Providence Medical Center took 20 minutes. Madison sat in her new car seat, staring out the window at the city she knew but had never really seen from inside a nice car. "Ms. Victoria, can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey." "Why don't you have kids of your own? You're so nice and you have this big house and money and everything. Why didn't you have a family?" Victoria was quiet for a moment, considering how to explain adult choices to a 6-year-old. "I was always very focused on my work. I built a big company and it took all my time and energy. I guess I thought that having a family would distract me from my goals. I thought I had to choose between being successful and having people who needed me. But you're really good at taking care of us. You're better than a lot of moms I see at school." "Thank you, sweetie. That means a lot to me. Do you think maybe you could keep being good at it, even after Daddy gets better?" Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" Madison's voice became very small. "I mean, could you maybe be like a backup mom? Like if Daddy gets sick again or if we need help, could we call you? Or would you just go back to your regular life and forget about us?" "Maddie, look at me." Victoria caught the little girl's eyes in the rearview mirror. "I am never going to forget about you. No matter what happens, no matter how things work out with your dad, you 3 are part of my life now. That doesn't just go away. Understand? Promise?" "I promise." They found Thomas in a private room on the 7th floor, looking significantly better than he had yesterday. The IV steroids had clearly started working. There was more color in his face, less shake in his hands. He was sitting up in bed when they walked in, and his face transformed when he saw his children. "Daddy!" Madison ran to him, climbing onto the bed carefully, mindful of the IV lines. Jake and Noah toddled after her, and suddenly Thomas was surrounded by his 3 children, all of them talking or babbling at once. Victoria stood back, giving them space, but Thomas caught her eye over Madison's head. "Thank you," he mouthed. She nodded, feeling like an intruder on this private moment. A nurse appeared at her elbow. "Are you Mrs. Harper?" "No, I'm a friend. Victoria Ashford." The nurse's eyes widened slightly. "The Victoria Ashford? From Ashford Innovations?" "Yes. My husband works for your company. You're a legend." The nurse glanced at the family on the bed. "I have to say I didn't expect to see you here. This is very kind." "It's not kindness," Victoria said softly. "It's necessity." After 20 minutes, Dr. Chen appeared, asking to speak with Victoria privately. They stepped into the hallway where Sam's expression was serious. "Thomas's physical recovery is progressing well. But Victoria, we need to talk about his mental state. He's showing signs of severe depression and anxiety. That's not unusual given his circumstances, but it's something we need to address. I want to start him on antidepressants, but he's refusing. Why? He says he can't afford to be foggy or out of it because he needs to be sharp for his kids. I've explained that modern antidepressants don't work that way, but he's not listening. I think he's afraid that if he admits to struggling mentally, someone will use it to take his children permanently. Victoria rubbed her temples. What do you need me to do? Talk to him. He trusts you, which is remarkable given that you met yesterday. Make him understand that taking care of his mental health isn't a weakness or a liability. It's necessary for his recovery. Victoria returned to the room, where Madison was showing Thomas a drawing she'd made that morning. A picture of their family with a new addition, a tall blonde woman standing next to Thomas, holding hands with all of them. "That's beautiful, baby girl," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "Who's that?" "That's Ms. Victoria. She's part of our family now." Thomas looked up at Victoria, something complicated passing across his face. "Maddie, honey, can you take your brothers to see the fish tank down the hall? I saw it when they brought me in yesterday. It's really cool." "Okay, Daddy." Madison gathered her brothers efficiently, and Victoria noticed how the little girl never questioned or argued. She just did what was needed. Once they were alone, Thomas gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Sit, please." Victoria sat, suddenly nervous. "How are you feeling?" "Better, physically anyway." He was quiet for a moment, picking at the blanket on his lap. "Dr. Chen says I need psychiatric medication. Says I'm depressed." "Are you?" Thomas laughed bitterly. "I've been homeless, watching my children starve, unable to do anything about it while my body destroyed itself from the inside. What do you think?" "I think depression is a normal response to an abnormal situation. I think taking medication to help you through this is smart, not weak." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who might lose custody because some social worker decides you're mentally unstable." "Thomas, look at me." Victoria leaned forward. "I have lawyers, good lawyers, who are already building a case to prevent exactly that. But you need to help me help you. If you don't address the depression, it will slow your physical recovery. The two are connected." "How do you know so much about this?" Victoria hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "Because I was on antidepressants for 3 years after my mother died. Because I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning, and everyone expects you to just swim harder. Because I'm not some privileged person who's never struggled, Thomas. I've just struggled differently than you have." Thomas studied her face, looking for lies. "You really took antidepressants?" "Sertraline, 50 milligrams, then eventually 100. It saved my life." "Did it make you feel weird? Out of control?" "For the first 2 weeks, yeah, a little. But then I just felt like myself again. Like the fog lifted and I could think clearly for the first time in months." Thomas was quiet, absorbing this. "Your kids are lucky to have you. They're your kids. For now. But Victoria, let's be honest about what's happening here. You're the one feeding them, bathing them, putting them to bed. You're the one showing up. That makes you their mom in every way that matters. I'm not trying to replace you. I know. But what if?" He stopped, struggling with the words. "What if they're better off with you? What if I get better and they still want you instead of me?" "Thomas, that's not how love works. Children don't have a limited capacity for it. They can love both of us, and honestly," Victoria smiled sadly, "they need both of us. You're their father. No one can replace that. But maybe they need a mother figure too. Maybe we can both be in their lives in different ways. Like a co-parenting situation? Maybe. We can figure it out as we go." Thomas looked at her for a long moment, and Victoria saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or hope. "You're not at all what I expected when Madison said a fancy lady answered the phone. What did you expect? Someone cold, someone who'd call the authorities and then forget we existed, someone who definitely wouldn't be sitting in a hospital room promising to help raise my kids. Then I guess we're both surprising each other." A comfortable silence fell between them. Thomas finally spoke again. Okay, I'll take the medication, but Victoria, I need you to promise me something. What? If I start acting strange, or if the medication makes me someone different, someone who can't be a good father, you'll tell me, and you'll keep the kids safe. Even from me if necessary. Thomas, that's not going to happen. Promise me anyway. Victoria met his intense gray eyes. I promise, but you need to promise me something too. What? That you'll stop seeing yourself as a burden, that you'll let people help you without constantly apologizing for existing. Your children deserve a father who believes he's worthy of love and support. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. I'm working on it. That's all I ask. Madison returned then with her brothers, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. But as Victoria watched Thomas interact with his children, she saw glimpses of the man he must have been before illness and poverty broke him down. He was funny, making the twins giggle with silly voices. He was attentive, noticing immediately when Jake seemed overwhelmed by the hospital environment. He was loving, constantly touching his children like he needed to reassure himself they were real. And Victoria found herself thinking that Thomas Harper, even broken and struggling, was one of the strongest people she'd ever met. They stayed for 2 hours before the twins got too restless. As Victoria gathered the children to leave, Thomas called out to her. Victoria? She turned back. Yes? Thank you. For everything, but especially for not judging me. We're all doing the best we can, Thomas. Your best just happened to include a 6-year-old cooking potatoes on a street corner. But you raised a child who's brave enough and smart enough to call for help when she needs it. That's not failure. That's success against impossible odds. As they left, Madison looked back at her father multiple times, waving until they turned the corner. In the elevator, she leaned against Victoria's leg. He looks better. He does. Do you think he'll really be okay? I think he's going to fight really hard to get back to you guys, and I think we're going to help him do it. Ms. Victoria, I'm glad I called the wrong number. Victoria stroked Madison's hair. Me too, sweetheart, me too. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Victoria took the children to a pediatrician Dr. Chen recommended, where all 3 were examined thoroughly. Madison was underweight and anemic, but otherwise healthy. The twins both had ear infections and developmental delays from malnutrition, but nothing that couldn't be treated. The doctor, a kind older woman named Dr. Patricia Warren, pulled Victoria aside. These children have been through significant neglect. Not intentional neglect, I can tell their father loves them, but neglect nonetheless. Madison in particular has been forced into a parentified role that's going to require therapy to undo. She's going to have anxiety, possibly PTSD symptoms. The bedwetting you mentioned is likely stress-related and may continue for months. What do I do? Love them, provide consistency, get them into therapy. And most importantly, let Madison be a child again. She's been an adult for 3 years. She needs to remember how to play, how to be carefree, how to not be responsible for everyone's survival. That afternoon, Victoria did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She took time off work. She called Richard and told him to reschedule everything for the next 2 weeks. Then she took the children to a park. Madison didn't know how to play on the playground equipment. She stood watching other children on the swings and slides, clearly wanting to join but not knowing how. The twins stayed close to Victoria, not venturing far from her side. Maddie, go play, Victoria encouraged. But I need to watch Jake and Noah. I'm watching them. You go play. But what if they need something? Then I'll take care of it. Honey, when was the last time you played? Just for fun? Madison thought about it. I don't remember. Victoria's heart broke a little more. She walked Madison over to the swings. Sit. Miss Victoria, I don't know how. You don't know how to swing? Madison shook her head, embarrassed. Victoria positioned her on the swing and started pushing gently. Madison shrieked with surprise, then started laughing, a sound of pure joy that Victoria realized she'd never heard from the child before. Higher, Madison called, and Victoria pushed harder, watching as the little girl's face transformed. For those few minutes, Madison wasn't a parentified child carrying the weight of her family's survival. She was just a 6-year-old girl on a swing, laughing in the sunshine. Other parents at the park watched with interest, and Victoria could see the questions in their eyes. Who was this businesswoman in expensive clothes pushing a clearly poor child on a swing? She ignored them, focused entirely on Madison's laughter. When Madison finally wanted to stop, her face was flushed and happy. That was fun. Want to try the slide? For the next hour, Victoria taught Madison how to play. They went down the slide together, built sandcastles, played on the seesaw. The twins eventually ventured to the toddler area, and Victoria watched them carefully while still engaging with Madison. As the sun started to set, they sat on a bench, sharing ice cream that Victoria had bought from a vendor. Madison leaned against her side, content and tired in the way that only happy exhaustion can produce. "Ms. Victoria, can we come back here tomorrow? We can come here any day you want, honey. Even when Daddy gets out of the hospital?" Victoria paused, considering. "Do you want to keep seeing me after your dad comes home?" Madison looked up at her with serious eyes. "I want you to be part of our family forever, is that okay?" Victoria pulled the little girl close, feeling the full weight of what she'd taken on settling around her shoulders. It wasn't uncomfortable, though. It felt right. "That's more than okay, Maddie, that's perfect." As they walked back to the car, Victoria's phone buzzed with what must have been the 50th message from work. She ignored it. Right now, 3 children needed her more than any business deal or board meeting, and for the first time in her entire career-focused life, Victoria Ashford was completely okay with that. 2 weeks passed in a blur of new routines, small victories, and unexpected challenges. Thomas was released from the hospital after 10 days, not fully recovered but stable enough to continue treatment as an outpatient. Victoria had made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She'd rented a house in the suburbs, a 4-bedroom craftsman with a yard and a porch swing and everything a family might need. "You're keeping them," Richard had said when she'd told him about the house. "You're actually doing this." "I'm helping them transition," Victoria had corrected. But they both knew it was more than that. The house was in a quiet neighborhood called Laurelhurst, with good schools and tree-lined streets. Victoria had furnished it carefully, making sure each child had their own space but that it felt warm and lived in, not sterile like her penthouse had been. Thomas moved into the downstairs master bedroom, still too weak to manage stairs easily. Madison got a room painted pale purple with stars on the ceiling. Jake and Noah shared a room with matching beds shaped like race cars, and Victoria had taken the 4th bedroom, telling herself it was temporary, just until Thomas was fully on his feet. But as she unpacked her clothes into the closet, she knew she was lying to herself. This wasn't temporary. This was her choosing, for the first time in her life, to build something that mattered more than money or success or power. On their first morning in the new house, Madison appeared at Victoria's bedroom door at 6:30, holding Jake's hand. "Ms. Victoria, Jake had a bad dream. Can he sleep with you?" Victoria, who hadn't been woken up before 7 in over a decade, found herself pulling back the covers and making space for a small boy who climbed in and immediately curled against her side, seeking comfort. Madison stood watching, clearly wanting to join but not wanting to ask. "You too, Maddie, come on." Madison's face lit up and she scrambled into the bed, situating herself on Victoria's other side. Within minutes, Noah appeared as well, having heard the commotion, and suddenly Victoria was surrounded by 3 children, all seeking her warmth and safety. Thomas found them like that an hour later, when he came upstairs slowly, using the railing for support. He stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. Victoria in silk pajamas, her carefully maintained appearance disheveled with sleep, 3 children sprawled across her like puppies. "They've never done that with anyone but me," Thomas said softly. Victoria looked up, suddenly self-conscious. "I hope that's okay. They just sort of migrated in." "It's more than okay." Thomas's voice was rough with emotion. "It's good. They should have someone else they can trust like that." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Victoria noticed how much better he looked than 2 weeks ago. The steroids and immunosuppressants were working, He'd gained back some weight and there was color in his face again. He was still thin, still weak, but he was no longer the ghost of a man she'd first met. "How are you feeling today?" Victoria asked. "Better, different. The antidepressants are helping, I think. Or maybe it's just knowing my kids are safe and fed and sleeping in beds instead of—" He stopped, his jaw clenching. "Instead of pushing a shopping cart down Morrison Street?" "Yeah, that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both watching the sleeping children. Finally, Thomas spoke again. "Victoria, we need to talk about something." "Okay." "CPS called yesterday. They want to do a home visit next week." Victoria's stomach dropped. "What did they say?" "They want to inspect the living conditions, interview the kids separately, interview me. They want to make sure the situation is appropriate." Thomas looked at her. "They specifically asked about you. About who you are, what your relationship is to the family, why a single woman with no prior connection to us is suddenly living with us and supporting us financially." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you saved us. That you're helping me get back on my feet, that the kids love you." He paused. "But Victoria, they're going to look for inappropriate dynamics. They're going to ask questions about whether there's anything romantic or sexual happening between us. They're going to want to know if this is some kind of savior complex, or if you're exploiting us somehow." Victoria felt heat rise to her face. "I would never—" "I know. But they don't know. And the problem is—" Thomas stopped, looking uncomfortable. "What?" "The problem is that I think I'm developing feelings for you. Real feelings. And I don't know if that's because you saved my family, or because I'm grateful, or because I'm actually attracted to you as a person. But whatever it is, if CPS picks up on it, they're going to see it as a red flag. A vulnerable man, a wealthy woman, children in the middle. It looks bad." Victoria's heart was pounding. "You have feelings for me?" Thomas laughed shakily. "Victoria, you're beautiful, smart, kind, and you love my children. How could I not? But that's not the point. The point is we need to be careful. We need to present the right image to CPS or they'll take the kids." "What does the right image look like?" "Separate households, clear boundaries, you as a family friend who's helping out temporarily, not as someone who lives here." "But I do live here. I know. And that's the problem." Madison stirred between them, her eyes opening. "Why are you guys talking about CPS? Are they going to take us away?" Thomas immediately softened, reaching over to stroke his daughter's hair. "No, baby girl. We're just planning for their visit, making sure everything goes smoothly." "But Miss Victoria's staying, right?" "She's not leaving?" Thomas and Victoria exchanged glances. "We're figuring it out, sweetheart," Victoria said. Madison sat up, suddenly wide awake and angry in a way Victoria had never seen from her. "No, you promised. You said you weren't going to leave us. You said we were family." "Maddie, calm down." "I won't calm down. Everyone always leaves. Mommy left and Daddy got sick and now you're going to leave too. You're just like everyone else." Tears streamed down Madison's face, and her voice rose to a shout that woke the twins, who immediately started crying. Thomas tried to reach for her, but Madison scrambled off the bed, backing toward the door. "I knew it was too good to be true. I knew you'd leave when it got hard." "Madison Harper, that is enough," Victoria said firmly, getting out of bed and crossing to the little girl. She knelt down to Madison's level, taking her shoulders gently but firmly. "Look at me, look at me." Madison's tear-filled eyes met hers. "I am not leaving you. Do you understand me? I am not your mother. I don't run away when things get difficult. But what I need you to understand is that sometimes we have to do things differently to protect the family. Sometimes that means I might need to have a different address on paper even if I'm here every day. Does that make sense? But why? Why can't you just stay? Because there are people whose job is to make sure children are safe, and sometimes they have rules that don't quite fit our situation. So we have to show them what they need to see so that we can keep this family together. But Maddie, listen to me. Keeping this family together is my #1 priority. Even if it means I have to bend some rules or play some games or maintain an apartment I barely use, I'm not going anywhere." Madison threw herself into Victoria's arms, sobbing. Promise. Promise me. I promise, baby, I promise. Thomas watched this exchange with an expression Victoria couldn't quite read. When Madison finally calmed down, he spoke quietly. She's right to be scared. Every adult in her life except me has let her down. Then we make sure we don't let her down, Victoria said firmly. The next few days were spent preparing for the CPS visit. Victoria moved some of her things back to her penthouse, making it look lived in. She established clear documentation of the guardianship arrangement, complete with lawyers' paperwork showing this was a temporary situation with a clear exit strategy. Thomas practiced answers to questions they anticipated, trying to make their unconventional arrangement sound conventional. The caseworker who arrived was a tired-looking woman in her 40s named Angela Morrison. She had kind eyes but a no-nonsense demeanor that made it clear she'd seen everything and wasn't easily fooled. Mr. Harper, Ms. Ashford, thank you for meeting with me today. Angela sat at the kitchen table, opening a thick file. I have to say this is one of the more unusual cases I've encountered. A millionaire tech CEO taking in a homeless family after a wrong number phone call. It raises questions. I understand, Victoria said calmly. What questions can we answer for you? Let's start with the basics. Ms. Ashford, what is your relationship with Mr. Harper and his children? I am their legal temporary guardian while Mr. Harper receives medical treatment for his lupus. Our arrangement is documented with lawyers, has clear terms, and includes a plan for transitioning the children back to their father's full-time care once he's medically stable. And are you romantically involved with Mr. Harper? No. The word came out easily because it was technically true. There were feelings, yes, but no relationship. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Angela made notes, her expression neutral. Mr. Harper, how do you feel about this arrangement? Thomas spoke carefully. Grateful, relieved. My children are safe, fed, in school, receiving medical care. That's more than I could provide 2 weeks ago. Victoria has given us a chance to rebuild our lives. And when your health improves, what happens then? We've discussed that, Thomas said. The plan is for me to regain custody and for Victoria to transition to more of a supportive role, like a family friend or godparent figure. The children have bonded with her, and I think maintaining that relationship is in their best interest. Angela interviewed the children next separately as required. She spoke with Madison for 20 minutes, asking her about school, about her routines, about whether she felt safe. Madison, coached by Victoria, answered honestly, but carefully. Do you like living here? Angela asked. Yes, ma'am. I have my own room, and I go to school every day and I eat breakfast and lunch and dinner. Ms. Victoria taught me how to play on the swings. And your father? How is he doing? He's getting better. He can walk upstairs now without getting too tired, and he reads us stories at bedtime again. Do you ever feel scared here? No. I used to feel scared all the time when we didn't have enough food and Daddy was too sick to get up. But now I only feel scared that CPS might take us away from Ms. Victoria and Daddy. Angela's pen paused. Why would you be scared of that? Because this is the first time I remember feeling safe, and I don't want it to end. When Angela finished all her interviews and inspection of the house, she sat down with Thomas and Victoria one final time. Her expression was softer than when she'd arrived. I'm going to be honest with you both. This situation is unorthodox. By the book, I should have concerns about power dynamics, about the speed at which this arrangement developed, about the potential for exploitation. But, she paused. I've been doing this job for 18 years. I've seen real abuse, real neglect, real predatory behavior, and this is not that. Victoria felt relief wash over her. So the children can stay? The children can stay, but I'm going to require monthly check-ins for the next 6 months. And Ms. Ashford, I need you to understand something. What you're doing is admirable, but it's also complicated. These children have experienced trauma. They're going to have behavioral issues, emotional struggles, attachment problems. This isn't going to be easy. I didn't think it would be. Good, because the honeymoon period is going to end. Madison is going to test boundaries. The twins are going to have developmental challenges. Mr. Harper is going to struggle with feeling like less of a provider and a father. And you're going to have moments where you question whether you made the right choice. I need to know that when those moments come, you're not going to abandon this family. Victoria met Angela's eyes steadily. I'm not going anywhere. Angela nodded slowly, then turned to Thomas. Mr. Harper, I need you to hear this too. It's okay to accept help. It's okay to have someone co-parent with you. But you need to work on your own healing, mental and physical, so that eventually you can stand on your own again. Don't let gratitude turn into dependence. I understand. After Angela left, Thomas and Victoria sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Thomas spoke. We passed. We did. For now. For now. Thomas turned to look at her, and Victoria saw something intense in his gray eyes. Victoria, can I ask you something? And I need you to be completely honest. Of course. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's because Madison called you mommy or because you felt sorry for us. What's the real reason? Victoria thought about how to answer, about all the easy lies she could tell. But Thomas deserved the truth. Because I spent 38 years building a perfect life that left me completely empty. I had money, success, respect, and I was miserable. I didn't have anyone who needed me, anyone who loved me for who I was, rather than what I could provide professionally. And then Madison called me, and for the first time in my entire adult life I felt necessary, not because of my business skills or my money, but because I showed up, because I cared. And that feeling of being genuinely necessary to someone's happiness? I'm addicted to it now. I can't go back to my empty penthouse and my empty life. Not when I could have this instead. Thomas stared at her, and Victoria saw understanding dawn in his expression. You're not saving us, we're saving you. Maybe we're saving each other. He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and slightly shaky. Victoria Ashford, you are the most unexpected person who's ever come into my life. Is that a good thing? It's the best thing. They sat like that, hands clasped, until Madison appeared with the twins. Are we celebrating? Did we win? Thomas laughed, pulling his daughter onto his lap. Yeah, baby girl, we won. Does that mean Miss Victoria stays? Victoria squeezed Thomas's hand once before releasing it. I stay. Madison cheered, and the twins clapped even though they didn't understand why. And Thomas smiled in a way that made Victoria's heart skip. And Victoria thought, not for the first time, that answering a wrong number phone call was the best mistake she'd ever made. 3 months later, the house in Laurelhurst felt like a real home. There were finger paintings on the refrigerator, toys scattered across the living room floor, and a perpetual pile of laundry that Victoria had learned to accept as part of life with children. Thomas had continued to improve, now able to walk without assistance, to help with the kids, and even to start looking for part-time work. But success brought new complications. Victoria sat at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning, reading an article on her tablet while Madison did homework beside her. The headline made her blood run cold. Tech CEO's secret family. Victoria Ashford's unconventional living arrangement raises questions. The article detailed everything. How she'd taken in a homeless family, how she'd moved into a house with them, how she was essentially playing house with a man and his children. It questioned her judgment, her motivations, and her fitness to lead a company. The board of Ashford Innovations had apparently called an emergency meeting. Thomas appeared in the doorway, his face pale. You've seen it. I've seen it. Victoria's hands were shaking, fury and fear warring inside her. Victoria, this is my fault. If I hadn't... Don't. Her voice was sharp, then softened when she saw Madison watching with worried eyes. This isn't your fault. This is someone trying to use my personal life to undermine my professional credibility. What are you going to do? Victoria stood, her mind already racing through options. I'm going to fight. Richard, I need you to call every board member. Emergency meeting at my office in 2 hours. The drive into the city was tense. Victoria had called her lawyer, her PR team, and 3 board members she knew would support her. But she also knew that some of the board had been looking for an excuse to push her out, to replace her with someone more traditionally stable. The boardroom at Ashford Innovations was on the 30th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Normally, Victoria loved this room, the way it made her feel powerful and in control. Today, it felt like enemy territory. 12 board members sat around the massive conference table. James Henderson, the oldest member and her biggest opponent, spoke first. Victoria, we need to discuss this article and what it means for the company. What it means? Victoria remained standing, projecting confidence even as her stomach churned. It means someone is trying to weaponize my personal life. The question is whether this board is going to let them succeed. It's not about weaponizing anything, James said smoothly. It's about judgment. You took in a homeless family after a wrong number. You're living with them, playing mother to children who aren't yours, potentially entering into a romantic relationship with a man who was destitute weeks ago. How does that look to our investors? To our clients? It looks like I'm a human being with empathy. What would you have me do, James? Ignore 3 children in crisis? Send them back to the streets? We're not suggesting that. We're suggesting that perhaps you're too distracted by this situation to effectively lead the company. The board has discussed appointing a temporary CEO while you take a leave of absence to sort out your personal life. Victoria's blood boiled. A temporary CEO? Or a permanent replacement that you're calling temporary to soften the blow? Victoria, please sit down, said Margaret Chen, one of her allies. Let's discuss this rationally. Victoria sat, forcing herself to appear calm. Fine. Let's be rational. My performance metrics for the last 3 months are on the screen behind me. Richard, pull them up. Richard, who'd positioned himself by the presentation controls, brought up a series of graphs and charts. Victoria walked through them methodically. Revenue is up 17%. Our new AI division, which I've been spearheading, is ahead of schedule and under budget. Client satisfaction is at an all-time high. Employee retention has improved. So please explain to me how my personal life is negatively impacting my professional performance. James leaned forward. The issue isn't your current performance. It's the potential liability you've created. What happens if this arrangement falls apart? What if the father sues you? What if something inappropriate is alleged? I have lawyers, James, good ones. Every aspect of this situation is documented, legal, and above board. Thomas Harper has no grounds to sue me, nor any desire to. But the optics, Victoria interrupted, are that I'm a successful woman who made a compassionate choice. And if this board has a problem with that, then maybe I'm not the issue. Maybe you are. The room fell silent. Finally, Margaret spoke. Victoria, I think what James is trying to say, perhaps poorly, is that we're concerned about you. This is a lot to take on while running a multi-billion-dollar company. Are you sure you're not stretched too thin? Victoria sat back, considering. Margaret, do you have children? 3. And did anyone ever ask you if having 3 children made you too distracted to do your job? Margaret smiled slightly. Fair point. Look, Victoria continued, addressing the full board. I understand this is unconventional. I understand it raises questions. But I'm not asking for your approval of my personal life. I'm showing you that my personal life hasn't impacted my professional effectiveness. And if you choose to remove me based solely on the optics of helping a family in need, then this company's values aren't what I thought they were. James wasn't giving up. And what happens in 6 months when you've lost interest in playing house? When the novelty wears off and you remember that you have a company to run? Victoria stood, her voice cold. I'm going to pretend you didn't just suggest that my care for 3 traumatized children is a novelty hobby. But since we're asking hypothetical questions, James, let me ask you one. What happens if I decide that a board that questions my judgment, this fundamentally isn't a board I want to work with? What happens if I decide to take my expertise and start a competing company? The threat hung in the air. Victoria had enough money to self-fund a startup. She had enough industry connections to poach key employees. She could gut Ashford Innovations if she wanted to. James paled. Victoria, there's no need for threats. Then there's no need for a vote on my leadership. Is there? After a long pause, Margaret spoke. I move that we table this discussion indefinitely. Victoria has demonstrated that her personal choices haven't impacted her professional performance. Unless that changes, Her private life is her own business. All in favor? 8 hands went up, including some Victoria hadn't expected. James and 3 others abstained, but it was enough. Motion carries, Margaret said. Victoria remains CEO. This meeting is adjourned. As the board members filed out, Margaret pulled Victoria aside. You played that brilliantly, but Victoria, be careful. James isn't going to let this go. He's been looking for a reason to push you out for years. Don't give him ammunition. I won't, thank you, Margaret. One more thing, that family you've taken in. I did some research on Thomas Harper. He's not who he appears to be. Victoria's blood ran cold. What do you mean? I mean, he worked at the shipyard, yes, but before that he was a naval officer. Graduated top of his class from the Naval Academy. Was on track for a command position. Then he suddenly resigned 8 years ago, right before Madison was born. There's no record of why. How do you know this? I have contacts. And Victoria, someone who walks away from a promising military career, doesn't do it without a good reason. You might want to ask him what that reason was. After Margaret left, Victoria sat alone in the boardroom, her mind racing. A naval officer? The Naval Academy? That was a level of education and achievement that completely contradicted the story she thought she knew. She drove back to Laurelhurst in a daze, arriving home to find Thomas in the kitchen making dinner. Madison was setting the table and the twins were playing in the living room. It looked like a normal family scene, comfortable and domestic. How did it go? Thomas asked, looking up from the pasta he was stirring. I kept my job. Barely. I'm sorry. This is because of me. No, it's because of people who think they can use my personal life against me professionally. Victoria sat at the kitchen island, watching him cook. Thomas, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you tell me you were a Naval Academy graduate? Thomas's hand stilled on the spoon. After a long moment, he turned to face her. How did you find out? I have my sources. Why didn't you tell me? He was quiet, clearly weighing what to say. Madison, sensing the tension, took the twins into the other room. Once they were alone, Thomas spoke. Because I was ashamed. Because I had this bright future ahead of me and I threw it all away. Why? Thomas sat across from her, his gray eyes haunted. I was engaged when I was at the academy, to a woman named Julia, Madison's mother. She got pregnant during my senior year, and I did the honorable thing. I married her. Madison was born just after my graduation. I thought military life would work for us, but Julia hated it from day one. Hated the moving, the deployments, the uncertainty. I served for 5 years trying to make it work. But when Madison was 5, Julia had a severe breakdown. She threatened to hurt herself, to hurt Madison. I tried to get her help, but she refused treatment. So I made a choice. You left the Navy. I resigned my commission 2 months before I would have received my first command. Madison was 5 years old. I thought if I could give Julia civilian life, stability, a normal existence, she'd get better. His voice broke. But she didn't get better. She got worse. And when I got sick, when we lost everything and were living in near poverty, she snapped. She said she couldn't do it anymore. She walked out when the twins were 5 days old and never came back. Thomas, why didn't you tell me this before? Because it makes me look like a failure. A man who had everything and lost it all. A man who couldn't save his wife, couldn't support his children, couldn't even stay healthy enough to work. Tears streamed down his face. And I was terrified that if you knew the truth, that I came from promise and potential and threw it all away, you'd realize I wasn't worth saving. Victoria stood and crossed to him, taking his face in her hands. Thomas Harper, you are not a failure. You sacrificed your career for your family. You fought an autoimmune disease while keeping 3 children alive against impossible odds. You raised a daughter so strong and capable that she literally saved your family by making 1 phone call. You are one of the strongest people I've ever met. But I lost everything. And now you're building it back. That's not failure, that's courage. Thomas pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist, his face pressed against her stomach as he sobbed. Victoria held him, stroking his hair, letting him release years of held-in pain and shame. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were red but clearer than she'd seen them. Victoria, I need to tell you something else. something I've been afraid to say. What? I'm falling in love with you. Not because you saved us. Not because I'm grateful. But because of who you are. You're fierce and strong and you don't give up on people. You taught Madison how to play. You sit up with the twins when they have nightmares. You fight entire boardrooms to protect us. And I know it's complicated. And I know the timing is terrible, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. Victoria's heart hammered in her chest. Thomas, you don't have to say anything back, I just needed you to know. Because hiding it, pretending it doesn't exist, that was making everything harder. Victoria thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. He was still technically her ward. There were power dynamics at play. His recovery was ongoing. The board was already suspicious. CPS would have concerns. There were 1,000 rational reasons to shut this down, but she was so tired of being rational. I'm falling for you too, she said softly, and it terrifies me, because I've never let anyone this close before. I've never been someone's partner, someone's co-parent. I've never had this much to lose. Thomas stood, closing the distance between them. Then maybe we figure it out together. Slowly, carefully, but honestly. What about the kids? The kids already think you're their mom in every way that matters. Making it official wouldn't change that. I'm not talking about making it official, Victoria said quickly. I'm talking about us figuring out what we are to each other before we involve them. Fair enough. They stood close, not quite touching, both aware of Madison watching from the doorway, even though she ducked back into the living room. We should be careful, Victoria said. We should, Thomas agreed. This could complicate everything. It could. We could lose everything we've built. We could. But neither of them moved away. And when Thomas finally leaned down and kissed her, soft and tentative and sweet, Victoria felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. They were interrupted by Madison's voice. Daddy, Ms. Victoria, are you kissing? They broke apart, both flushed. Madison stood in the doorway, her expression cautiously hopeful. Because if you are, that's okay. I think you should kiss. You like each other and you're nice together. Maddie, it's complicated, Thomas started. No, it's not, Madison said with the certainty of a 6-year-old who'd figured out the answer to a problem. Ms. Victoria loves us, and you love Ms. Victoria, and we love both of you. That's not complicated. That's family. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. Out of the mouths of babes. What does that mean? Madison asked. It means you're smarter than all the adults in this room combined, Victoria said, pulling the little girl into a hug. Thomas joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them, and suddenly the twins were there too, not wanting to be left out. They stood in the kitchen, this makeshift family, holding each other. So what happens now? Thomas asked. Victoria looked at him, at Madison, at Jake and Noah. She thought about the board meeting, about CPS, about all the complications that lay ahead. And she thought about how, for the first time in her life, she had people who needed her, not for what she could provide, but for who she was. Now? Victoria smiled. Now we figure it out together. One day at a time. Can we eat dinner first? Madison asked. I'm really hungry, and the pasta's getting cold. Thomas laughed, the sound free and genuine. Yeah, baby girl. We can eat dinner first. As they sat around the table, passing plates and sharing stories from their day, Victoria caught Thomas's eye. He smiled at her, a private smile full of promise and possibility. And Victoria realized that her life, her real life, the one that mattered, had started the moment Madison Harper had called a wrong number and asked for help. Everything before that had just been practice for this, for being part of something bigger than herself, for loving people who loved her back, for building a family not from blood or obligation, but from choice and commitment, and showing up every single day. 6 months ago, she'd been the ice queen of Portland, successful and empty. Now she was Ms. Victoria, Mama Victoria, the woman who'd answered a desperate call and found her purpose. And as she watched Madison help feed her brothers, as she felt Thomas's hand find hers under the table, as she heard the laughter and chatter of her chosen family, Victoria Ashford knew with absolute certainty that she'd finally found what she'd been searching for her entire life. She'd found home.